Today, I'm reviewing Thunderhead at Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. If you took a time machine back to 2005, Thunderhead was one of the best wooden coasters in the world. In 2005, Thunderhead placed atop the Golden Ticket Awards and second in the Mitch Hawker Wooden Coaster Poll. Today, it may be crazy to think of Thunderhead as an elite coaster. Heck, it's no longer even the best wooden coaster at Dollywood. But Thunderhead is still a really solid ride. Built by Great Coasters International, it's actually amazing just how good Thunderhead is. Thunderhead was the 7th coaster built by GCI, but several of the coasters that came before Thunderhead were criticized for their roughness or pacing issues. GCI announced to the world in 2003 with Ozark Wildcat that they had fine-tuned their twister layouts to provide smooth rides packed with airtime, and Thunderhead was the evolution of this. Not many of Dollywood's coasters are visible from the parking lot, but you can see the lift hill for Thunderhead and hear the wildest ride in the woods rumbling through its layout. When Thunderhead opened in 2004, it was part of an all-new area known as the Thunderhead Gap. But today, that area has been rethemed to Timber Canyon to include multiple other attractions along with Thunderhead. In my experience, Thunderhead rarely has a wait. The park prefers to run one train on Thunderhead for track wear, but they do not hesitate to add the second train if the coaster starts generating a consistent wait. Like all of GCI's coasters since the turn of the millennium, Thunderhead utilizes the company's Millennium Flyer trains, which effortlessly navigate the ride's twisted layout. And Thunderhead still has the original generation of Millennium Flyer trains. This means that the coaster has the softer padding for the seats, and they feel more like an upholstered chair. And the T-bar restraints have more give in them, meaning these trains are excellent for riders. They're smooth and the airtime feels more pronounced. Now, your experience at Thunderhead could vary depending upon when you ride this coaster, for two reasons. First, the setting. When Thunderhead opened, it was nestled against the woods, and it was actually pretty hard to even get footage of this coaster. But over time, Thunderhead became more exposed. Drop line was built next to it, whistle punk chaser was installed in the ride's structure, and most shockingly, all the trees in the backside of the coaster were demolished for the new for 2019 Wildwood Grove area. It's actually quite jarring to see photos comparing Thunderhead pre-2019 to today. But in all honesty, since Thunderhead is located on a hillside, crosses over itself so many times, and hauls through its layout, I usually don't notice the other attractions after cresting the lift hill. The other thing that can dramatically impact your Thunderhead experience is how smooth the ride is running. Opening year, GCI's run about as smooth as a wooden coaster can be, but their aggressive layouts can get rough over time without proper retracking. Thunderhead was getting quite bumpy 3 or 4 years ago, but Dollywood has since retracted much of Thunderhead, which has it running pretty darn smoothly today. In terms of seat selection, I much prefer the front in Thunderhead. When Thunderhead is running rough, the front is the only seat that seems to ride quite smoothly. But even when Thunderhead is running smoothly, the front is the superior seat for airtime. All the turnarounds offer airtime up front, but the same cannot be said in the back row. And when you do get airtime up front, that specific pop of airtime tends to be stronger up there. Thunderhead stands 100 feet tall, and it's undeniably a twister. Throughout the 3,230 feet of track, you encounter 22 turns and 32 crossovers. So it's pretty hard to anticipate where you're going next, and it's challenging to memorize this coaster's layout. Thunderhead begins with a twisting first drop that doesn't really do anything in the airtime department, but this picturesque drop does offer some solid laterals towards the back. That's followed by the first of many turnarounds, and if you're up front, these turnarounds are the highlight of the ride. The crest of this turnaround is quite sharp, so it provides an aggressive pop of airtime. The strongest moment of airtime in the entire coaster in my opinion. Compare that to the descent that is a gradual curving drop without that sharp crest, which means back row riders miss out on the airtime here. Compare that to the second turnaround, where again if you're up front you get another great moment of airtime. But if you're in the back you actually get some airtime on the descent because there's a sharp crest in the descent. That's followed by a speed hill that delivers some decent sustained floater airtime throughout the train. It's one of the few straight hills in all of Thunderhead. You then rip through a turnaround that unfortunately offers no airtime for any seat, but you then charge through the station in the world's first station flyby element. And this element is quite the spectacle. On-ride, it feels like a tunnel because you have the low clearances with the station's roof. Off-ride, you hear the intimidating roar of the train zipping through the station at roughly 40 miles per hour. It looks like a blur. At the end of this flyby, there's a tiny little dip that gives riders a quick pop of airtime, and then there's another turnaround leading into the second half. And this turnaround rides much like the first turnaround. Front row riders get another mighty pop of airtime entering it, but the descent is too gradual to give back row riders any airtime. The second half of Thunderhead hugs the ground and the trains charge through this section. This section is a fast-paced blitz of airtime hills and small turnarounds. The bunny hills deliver solid flow to airtime throughout the entire train, but the tiny turnarounds are another instance where only the front row experiences that airtime. For reference, the front gets 5 different pops of airtime in the second half, while the back only gets 3. Dollywood is home to a lot of great night rides, and while Lightning Rod rightfully gets most of that attention, Thunderhead isn't too shabby in that department either. Because of the ride's dense wooden structure, it really shrouds the entire layout. Plus, Thunderhead does warm up as the day goes on. So what would I rate Thunderhead? I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I love Thunderhead's pacing, especially if you're up front, but I can't quite give Thunderhead a perfect score for 2 reasons. 1, the bumpiness that has cropped up in the past, and 2, the noticeable variation between the front and back row rides. Thunderhead is a prototypical GCI twister combining sweeping turns, fast pacing, and quick pops of airtime into one complete ride experience. And while it is often overshadowed by Lightning Rod, Thunderhead does offer its own unique ride experience, and it's my second favorite coaster at all of Dollywood. What are your thoughts about Thunderhead? Are you a fan of this GCI twister? I'd love to hear your comments down below. If you enjoyed this review, I'd appreciate if you liked this video and subscribe for more roller coaster reviews here at Canopy Coaster.